Part 25. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 241. Chapter 241. Since Lan Min can participate, why can't she, Sunian? Sunian sat quietly in the lounge. She closed her eyes and carefully recalled everything that happened during this period of her previous life. At this time, she thought of Fei Quan. Perhaps the plot has changed since the time she rescued Wan Ling. This may be the butterfly effect. Thinking of this, Sunian suddenly opened his eyes with firm eyes. Since Lan Min can participate, then why can't she, Sunian? After making the decision, Sunian immediately ran to Li Baikan and expressed his thoughts. Sunian and Li Baikan were not just going through the motions. I plan to go find the old man. After all, given the old man's attitude, she was sure he would agree. Just wait for Li Baikan to refuse, and then leave. Good. Sunian? She swallowed. Baikan, what did you say? I said I wanted to be the chief designer and be responsible for this case. I said yes. What's wrong? Li Baikan said calmly. Sunian then looked at Li Baikan carefully from top to bottom. Finally, I couldn't help but say, you just agreed. Don't you worry about the company's people saying 3 or 4 things. After all, this cooperation is so important. If you leave this to me, how will you convince the public? Now the company is in the process of with such a critical project. If something unexpected happens now, it will have a huge impact on the company. But aren't you asking me for permission now? Sunian. Yes, I am not asking Li Baikan to agree to me being the chief designer of this project. I am already happy. Why is this happening? I feel confused. After realizing this, Sunian felt a little embarrassed. Do you think it's impossible for me to agree, and then you plan to ask the old man? Li Baikan paused. In other words, you are just going through the motions here. Even if you really think so in your heart. But when Li Baikan said this, he was still a little embarrassed, and then he said with an awkward smile, Baikan, how could you say that? How could I think so? That's what you think. Li Baikan, who was sitting down, suddenly stood up and walked towards Sunian. Looking at the man coming towards him, Sunian subconsciously stepped back. But this time, before Sunian could take a few steps back, he was forcefully pulled over by the man. Now I really doubt that all the words you said about your love for me were false. You don't like me or love me at all. You only do that because I am Li Baikan. If it were anyone else, you would definitely do that too. Baikan, how can you think so? Why can't I think so? During this period, whenever something happens to you, the first thing you think of is the old man. We are husband and wife. You and the old man are not husband and wife, do you know that? These words really left Sunian speechless. The key is, Sunian even felt that he was like a scumbag in Li Baikan's eyes. Sunian felt that this could not be done, so he swallowed silently, and then said, Baikan, you really misunderstood. But after Sunian said this, Li Baikan put his slender fingers against her heart. Sunian, am I really there in this place? Sunian really couldn't say anything now. Sunian, I think you should think about our relationship and how we will get along in the future. After saying this, Li Baikan turned and walked directly outside. That's right, Li Baikan did this on purpose. Preemptive strike. Let this woman get rid of her habit of relying on the old man. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 242. Chapter 242. Li Baikan seems to have run away from home. The following few days, Li Baikan didn't even go home. Sunian didn't realize it until later. This guy seems to have run away from home. After realizing this, Sunian was really depressed. What should she do now? Should she coax Lee Baiken? How should I coax him? When thinking of this, Sunian couldn't help but think of Lee Baiken's eyes. Whenever she thought of Lee Baiken's look these days, she would feel inexplicably guilty. That feeling of guilt could not even be described in words. Apologize. Sunian got a headache when he thought of these two words. Huge headache. Finally she couldn't help but pick up the phone and call Josu. After all, didn't Josu flatter her so loudly in front of her? Isn't it time for him to be used? Josu's phone call soon came through. Josu, madam, what are your orders? Hearing Josu's words, Sunian couldn't help but hold his forehead. She now feels that she was a little too impulsive when she made this call. Even if you want to inquire about Lee Baiken's whereabouts, you have to think about what to say when the call is connected. It's better now, Sunian doesn't know what to do. If she hangs up the phone, it will appear that she is a very timid person. Madam, what can I do for you, madam, are you still listening? Hearing Josu's questioning voice, Sunian took a deep breath before speaking. Josu, do you know where Baiken is these days? Josu on the other end of the phone did not respond immediately. Sunian couldn't help but feel a little funny. She really felt that she might be thinking too much. How could Lee Baiken feel uncomfortable? She had forgotten that these days, she and Lee Baiken were both acting. Perhaps Lee Baiken and his group felt bored when they were staying with him, so they deliberately found excuses to hide away. But Sunian was not very happy when he thought so. Even Sunian herself didn't notice that there was a hint of bitterness deep in her heart. Just when Sunian was about to hang up, Josu finally spoke. Madam, I don't know whether I should tell you or not. After all, I think Mr. Lee doesn't want to know about his current situation, but... Following Josu's words, Sunian's heart clenched involuntarily. But what? At this time, Josu sighed deeply. Madam, don't tell Mr. Lee, I told you. Okay. Sunian tightened his grip on the phone. Listen to Josu say, Madam, Mr. Lee has been shutting himself in the hotel room these days and drinking non-stop. I have never seen Mr. Lee like this. Madam, what happened to you and Mr. Lee? I've never seen Mr. Lee like this before. Sunian supported Josu's words, and Lee Baiken's questioning eyes appeared in her mind again. She took a deep breath, and then asked, Where are you? Madam, do you want to come over? If you want to come over, then I will arrange for someone to send you over. You must know that even in the past few days, Mr. Lee has repeatedly told you not to let anything happen to you. You must know that Huo Linyuan is very cunning. Josu hung up the phone and looked at Lee Baiken, who was sitting next to him, with a stern look. Mr. Lee, look, is it okay for me to say this? Lee Baiken opened his eyes and glanced at him. Okay. Hey, you heard my wife's anxiety just now. Everything is really your planning. This is not a calculation. When Lee Baiken heard the word calculation, he interrupted directly. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 243. Chapter 243. Why don't you take advantage of this opportunity and take advantage of the situation? If before, Josu still felt that Sunian was only temporarily favored by Lee Baiken. Now he was sure. Determine who is the real Palace. Go pick her up and try to keep her safe and nothing will happen to her. After Josu heard this, he left immediately. After Josu left, Lee Baiken continued to drink one cup after another. After all, you still have to be serious when acting. In fact, Lee Baiken's heart has been hanging in the air these past few days. After all, Sunian's attitude, he was afraid that Sunian would not come to see him, and he also knew that Sunian would definitely come in order to perform the scene well, so he was very confused. Lee Baiken closed his eyes. Sunian arrived soon. Sunian was shocked when he saw the wine bottles all over the floor as soon as he walked in the door. You must know that Josu told her that Lee Baiken got drunk because of her these days. She really didn't believe it. As Sunian went deeper, Lee Baiken's decadent appearance came into view. At this moment, the man was disheveled, with stubble on his face, and a bottle of wine in his hand. When seeing this man, Sunian's first thought was, Lee Baiken looks like he is unconscious. Should I take advantage of this opportunity and strike hard? Do it directly? Lee Baiken. Yeah, that's a good idea. Lee Baiken originally wanted to use this opportunity to cause trouble. He thinks that the saying that crying children get candy is acceptable anywhere. But he underestimated. She made it. The thoughts of a child. Baiken, how are you? Why do you drink so much? It's not good for your health if you drink so much. Sunian slowly approached Lee Baiken. It is said that drinking alcohol affects sperm and also affects time. Yes, 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 it all has an impact, so should I take action now? So confused. Lee Baiken did not expect that this woman would actually become entangled. He is really going to break through the defense now. After feeling being poked by Sunian's hand, Lee Baiken suddenly opened his eyes. Sunian felt a little frightened when Lee Baiken looked at her like this. Just when Sunian was about to say something, Lee Baiken spoke, actually, you don't like me or love me, right? This. Sunian should respond quickly now and say many words quickly to dispel Lee Baiken's suspicion. Reason told her that this was a good opportunity. If it was dismissed, then she would be able to get closer to Baiken, and then she would be able to get the seeds more easily and give birth to Mo Bao. But now she can't speak. Lee Baiken had a clear view of all Sunian's emotions. He knew it. She was still a little touched in her heart and her head was in a trance. I knew it, Lee Baiken continued to say in a hurt tone. What do you know? You know that I only married you because of profit. All my actions towards you are because of your identity. Just because the first thing I think of when something happens is Dad. Haha. Sunian was in a daze. Slowly dispersed, you asked me if I have you in my heart. Well, I also want to ask, am I still a person in your heart? Lee Baiken sat up straight now. I am a pet in a pet shop. If you take it home, I must lick you wholeheartedly, Baiken. Even if you buy a pet, it will take some time to develop feelings. In your heart, I am not even as good as a pet. Lee Baiken was anxious now. He thought that doing this would make Sunian understand that he really wanted to do everything for her. But I didn't expect that Sunian would actually think like this. When he saw Sunian retreating, he stood up immediately. Didloy, I was almost confused by this guy. Fortunately, I am very clever. Just this one tried to confuse me. Haha, childish. I don't eat anything except beauty. Anxious Lee Baiken. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 244. Chapter 244. Lee Baiken is really a bit cunning. But having said that, Lee Baiken actually did this very carefully. I was almost confused by his pitiful handsome face, but luckily I had seen Mo Bao's face too much, so I had some resistance. And I don't know how many novels I have read, how could this guy outsmart me by playing tricks, huh? Lee Baiken immediately took a few steps and hugged Sunian. I swear, I didn't think so. The man's loud voice rang in Sunian's ears. Sunian's body stiffened. I didn't think so. It's true that I was a little too impatient. This is not a matter of being impatient or not, Sunian deliberately sneered, it's a matter of your heart. Why do you think that if you give me some material things and transfer all your property to me, then I will be grateful to you, Baikan. My love has its limits. I can't love you forever. One day my love will be squandered, and by then, I won't be able to convince myself. Ha ha ha, one day love will be squandered by me. Look, my speaking level is different. After this guy dies, then his things will be mine, and what's so reliable about my husband being a domineering president? Only when my son is a domineering president. After all, even if her husband is good, he may run away with someone at any time, but his son will always be his. Lee Baikan felt a little headache when he heard Sunian's thoughts. But, he felt inexplicably that what she said actually made sense. We can't let Mo Bao come out so quickly. Mo Bao, why, I protest, believe it or not, I will come out to find a bunch of male favorites for my mother, so that my mother can be a bride every day. Sunian, tell me what I need to say so that you can believe me. Lee Baikan's tone was full of helplessness. But when Sunian heard this, his eyes suddenly lit up. You want me to believe that you are really attracted to me? It's very simple. You only need to do one thing. Upon hearing this, Lee Baikan let go of Sunian and turned him around. You explain. Sunian said, can you say that you hope that Lan Min will be hit by a car when he goes out, his teeth will be blocked when drinking water, and he will fall down when walking? Lee Baikan. Ha ha ha, I am so vicious. There is no one more vicious than me in this world. Over up, you're acting out a love story with me. This licking dog and I are not even considered to be of the same rank. Well, I am the king, and this guy is definitely a bronze. Lee Baikan really wanted to laugh at this moment. It's such a good thing. Is it okay to just say this? Sunian, who was feeling proud in her heart, stiffened. She looked at Lee Baikan and blinked. What do you mean by this? Does this guy really want to say it? No, absolutely not. This guy is set up to be a mindless licker. How could such a mindless licker say bad things about the heroine? Then I heard Lee Baikan looking at Sunian with firm eyes and saying word by word, I, Lee Baikan, hope that Lan Min will be hit by a car when he goes out, his teeth will be blocked when drinking water, and he will fall down when walking. Lee Baikan not only repeated what Su said, he read the words, and when he finished speaking, he held her hand and placed it on his heart. Do you believe it now? Sunian's heart beat a little faster under Lee Baikan's firm eyes. Lee Baikan is really a bit cunning. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 245. Chapter 245. I believe that love grows over time. For some reason, Sunian subconsciously wanted to take back his hand. But at this moment, Lee Baikan's hand was tightly grasped. For this reason, she could feel the man's strong heartbeat. At this time, Lee Baikan leaned slightly closer to her. Have you missed me these days? But I miss you, but I don't know how to see you. If I just go to see you directly, then what should I do if you don't take my unhappiness to heart? At the same time, I am also thinking about how to end this conflict. If you don't come, then I will never see you. What Lee Baikan said is true. That is indeed what he has been thinking these days. If he just goes back like this, then Sunian will still be as dependent on the old man as before and feels that the old man is more reliable than him. But if he doesn't go back, then their relationship will be so frozen. Even Lee Baikan felt that he was completely performing a one-man show these days. Perhaps this little woman has been enjoying herself at home these past few days. These thoughts kept swimming back and forth in his mind. Lee Baikan wanted to use alcohol to suppress these thoughts, but no matter how much he drank, he could not suppress these so-called thoughts. If love is really a game, then Lee Baikan feels that he has really lost. Every word Lee Baikan said made Sunian's heart beat faster. Is there any? The man asked again. Even has a hint of demagogy. Just like the temptation encountered by Pandora. These simple words reminded Sunian of her mood these past few days, and she couldn't help but want to withdraw her hand. Seeing these actions, Lee Baiken also got the answer. His depressed mood slowly rose. I now kind of believe in the words love grows over time. As long as she doesn't have no feelings for him, that's fine. Sunian's brain had stopped spinning at this moment. When he heard this, he blurted out, "Then you are, ah." Lee Baiken's face suddenly stiffened. The ambiguous atmosphere disappeared for a while. Sunian came back to his senses immediately. Hey, I accidentally said what was on my mind. It's really a bit embarrassing. What should I say to ease the situation? It makes me seem very impatient. Okay, I am indeed impatient, but what if I scare this guy away? Lee Baiken, it turns out that she knew that she was very impatient. Sunian cleared her throat, and then spoke to break the awkwardness. I mean, since you think so, Baiken, then let's do it slowly. Even droplets of water can penetrate stone, so our relationship will definitely grow slowly as time goes by. I actually know that you only have a little crush on me, so we can take it slow. You slowly fall in love with me, and I slowly learn to rely on you. Okay, let's go home. Lee Baiken waited for Sunian to talk nonsense, then held her hand and said. I don't know why, but this simple sentence moved Sunian. Then he obediently let Lee Baiken hold his hand and go out. Josu subconsciously breathed a sigh of relief when he saw the two people coming out holding hands. He has been having a hard time these days. Although Lee Baiken didn't mean to anger him, it was really uncomfortable to bear the low pressure emanating from Lee Baiken all day long. It's fine now, just make peace. In addition, he can also report to the old man and mix in some bonuses, which can be regarded as his mental comfort these days. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 246. Chapter 246. Lee Baiken, I'm afraid your sister-in-law will misunderstand. When they first walked to the hotel lobby, I saw Lan Min coming in a hurry. Lan Min's eyes turned red when he saw the two people holding hands together. She just got the news that Lee Baiken and Sunian were quarreling, and rushed over immediately. Why come here? Is it a reconciliation? What a coincidence, Miss Lan. Sunian greeted warmly. Faced with Sunian's enthusiasm, Lan Min felt a little uncomfortable. I always feel like the Sunian is plotting something. But Lan Min was right about this. Sure enough, the next moment, Sunian said in a sweet voice, Lan Min, are you here to say thank you to me? I just said, Lan Min, you have been by Baiken's side for so long, how could you be rude? It turned out to be you plan to thank me in person, look at you. Thank you for everything. Lee Baiken was still a little happy for Lan Min's appearance. He could see it, and he had to use his attitude towards Lan Min to make Sunian believe that he was not acting. So in the current situation, we will naturally cooperate well. It's like this. I saw a blog post posted by Lanzi on the internet. I helped her find the typos, and Lanzi came to me to thank me. Oh my, this Lanzi is really polite. Such a small thing is worth it. Come and say thank you. It's better that Sunian didn't mention this. You have to know that Sunian is very meddlesome, and she also bought a lot of drafts, which almost made her illiterate. Because of this matter, Huo Linyuan had no expression for her these days. This made Lan Min miss the old Lee Baiken more and more. You must know that Lee Baiken in the past would always be by her side no matter what happened. If someone bullied her, he would definitely stand up as soon as possible. How could it be like this? Even so, Lan Min couldn't help but stare at Lee Baiken with burning eyes. I want to see the expression on the man's handsome face. Even a little bit, just a little bit is good. But Li Baikan showed an icy look. I didn't expect you to be so enthusiastic. Of course I'm enthusiastic. If I hadn't warned you, your article would have been seen by more people. It would have been so embarrassing. But since Baikan, you regard Lan Min as your sister, then this matter that's exactly what I should do. At this time, Li Baikan finally turned his attention to Lan Min, Lan Min. After hearing Li Baikan call him that, Lan Min suddenly became nervous. She knew that Li Baikan must. But the next moment, Li Baikan's words were like a slap in the face. Li Bei said, Lan Shi, don't look at me like that. I'm a married man now. If you look at me like that, I'm afraid your sister-in-law will misunderstand me. Sunian. What else could Lan Min do? He could only keep smiling and say to Sunian, Miss Su, you are right. But before Lan Min finished speaking, he was coldly interrupted by Li Baikan. It's not Miss Su, but Mrs. Li, or sister-in-law, Lan Min. Do you need me to teach you about this matter? Sunian. Shit, this guy is crazy. This acting is too real. Really ask what is there in the world, it is a matter of life and death. This dog-licking male partner can really do anything to save the heroine. I really want to applaud him now. At this moment, Lan Min's face could not be more ugly. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 247. Chapter 247. Rounding it off is your mother. And Sunian now really feels that she is born to be a vicious female supporting role. The reason why I say that, it was because Sunian was really happy to see Lan Min's ugly face. If I guessed correctly, then this Lan Min must be thinking that he must be patient, and he must be patient in order to wake up Li Baikan. Everyone is drunk and I am sober alone. In fact, Lan Min did think so. Lan Min felt that he had to bow his head and have the opportunity to get close to Li Baikan and be alone with Li Baikan. Only in this way could he solve his misunderstanding about himself. So Lan Min took a deep breath, lowered his head and said, Mrs. Li, thank you. Please tell me clearly what you are thanking me for. If a vicious female supporting character cannot go too far, then what kind of evil female supporting character can she be called? Thank you for pointing out the typo. Sunian naturally saw Lan Min clenching her hands, and it was really difficult for her. Saying the words Mrs. Li might mean that she was giving in. But in this situation, Sunian would of course continue to push her boundaries. He said, You're welcome, you're welcome. Who made me your sister-in-law? My eldest sister-in-law is like a mother. Rounding it all off, I'm almost your mother. If that's the case, then I will naturally be responsible for you. Li Baikan, who was next to him, really couldn't hold back when he heard this. Rounding. Is this how is used? Now Li Baikan is a little curious, who taught Sunian this idiom? There is something wrong with every idiom she uses. You should also check what you post carefully next time you post this. After all, you have a lot of fans online. You have tens of millions. You are not rich like me and can buy it. It's not easy to have a lot of fans. Lan Yan couldn't help but reply, most of the fans I bought are fake. I can't help it, I have more money, Sunian said calmly. Lan Yan felt that if she continued this topic, she might be off by Sunian, so she changed the topic. By the way, Baikan, you value that landmark design. I'm taking over it recently. We can communicate. Communication will also help both parties, even if I am working with Huo now. These words really almost made Sunian laugh. Even though Sunian knew very well that Lan Min's purpose in saying this was to make a difference with himself. You see, I am different from Sunian, a woman who has fallen in the eyes of money. Idiot, as long as this guy doesn't have the so-called heroine halo, she can be beaten to death for such behavior. This guy just said to Li Baikan directly, come and see, I can get in touch with the Huo group's bottom line, come and treat me, come and please me, haha. Li Baikan now feels more and more stupid about this Lan Min. Do you want to give me the Huo group's lowest bid directly? Li Baikan said directly. Lan Min didn't expect that Li Baikan would say this, and immediately said righteously, Baikan, although I understand how much you value this matter, this bidding is not my business alone. I can't do it because of the relationship between us. I am familiar with you and give you the hard work of others. Then what do we communicate about? Sunian quickly interrupted, I understand, no wonder you, Lan Min, showed up at this time. You wanted to come to Baikan's side, and then work as an undercover agent for the Huo family, and tell Huo Linyuan our bid, Lan Min, Baikan is going to kill you as a sister, is this what you, a sister, should do? End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 248. Chapter 248. Speak slowly, don't choke. That's not what I meant, Sunian, please don't slander me. Lan Min suddenly became anxious, and then shouted sternly, Sunian, I know you want to sow discord between us, but you don't want to throw such a tantrum at me either. Dirty water. Who poured dirty water on you? If you really have good intentions, then why did you tell Baikan instead of me? Don't you know that I am the person in charge of this project, not Baikan? These words suddenly shocked Lan Min. What do you mean, the person in charge of this project is you? Sunian let go of Li Baikan's hand, and then walked up to Lan Min. It seems that Lan Min, you are so ignorant that you don't even know about this. Since I accidentally discovered my design talent, the current design the project was handed over to me, and now I'm really happy to think that the city's future landmark building will be built by me. Sunian used to watch TV or novels, and saw that the villain would act triumphantly in front of the protagonist before things were completed or failed, and he felt that such behavior was really stupid. But now it's really her turn. Sunian just realized that this feeling is really good. Especially seeing the heroine's face slowly turn bad, it's really refreshing. Then he saw the heroine Lan Min pointing at her righteously, Sunian, forget it, you usually mess around, why are you messing around now? Do you know how important this project is to the Li group? You are now, but you do this because of your own selfish desires. Sunian, is this proof that you keep saying you love Baikan? Why did you say that? Sunian immediately looked furious. Why do I say that? Sunian, you still have the nerve to ask this. Do you know design? Do you have a design qualification certificate? Have you ever had any works? Do you know how important this is? Look at this Lan Min's righteous and awe-inspiring look. Represents light and justice. But little did he know that Sunian was just waiting for these words. What about you, do you know these? Do you have a design qualification certificate? Do you have any works? Do you understand design? Sunian immediately put on a sharp expression, why can you be a designer of Huo Group? So why can't I, Lan Min, do you have an extra head or a sharp mind than me? If that's the case, then I'll call the institute right away. After all, the future of mankind may lie with you. At this moment, Lan Min's momentum was instantly destroyed. But Lan Min is also a heroine after all, and she quickly said, I am different from you. What's the difference between you and me? You rely on men, and I rely on myself. I have money. As long as I give a satisfactory price, I don't know how many people are willing to work for me, and give the best people in the world to me. The design is presented to me, but you don't even have money. Can you guarantee that your work will be perfect? At this moment, Sunian felt that he had fully displayed his viciousness. It's really great. Now Sunian really feels that being a vicious female supporting role is really exciting. But at this moment, a gentle hand suddenly patted her back gently, as if she was feeling relieved. Before Sunian could react, Lee Baiken's caring voice sounded, "Speak slowly, don't choke. Starting from tomorrow, I will start updating again. I have been dizzy from writing in the past few days, so I am going to start." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 249. Chapter 249. She also said she likes me, haha, man. Sunian burst into laughter after hearing this. This guy, what I said are all facts, and he told me not to choke. He also said he likes me, man. Lee Baiken. Can he say that he really felt that Sunian spoke too fast and was worried that Sunian would be out of breath? I didn't expect you, Sunian, to be so vulgar. Money can't buy everything in this world. In this world, intentions are more important than money, Lan Min said righteously. Indeed, if you have money, you can buy a lot of designs. But you don't have the same intention as me. Since you insist on doing this, let's see who can succeed. Haha, your mental arithmetic is not the heart of other people in this world. It is true that I sell it with money. I spent such a high price. How could the designer I found not be careful? You still look down on you. You look down on others. Why are you so superior? These words completely left Lan Min speechless. Sunian was very arrogant when he saw this and said, "It's okay if you don't have money or power. You are so contemptuous of others. I don't know what Baiken saw in you in the first place. You have no advantages at all." Lee Baiken has now seen Sunian's eloquence. Even he felt that if he talked to Sunian, he might not be able to take advantage. But it was really refreshing to see Lan Min speechless. Sunian will not mess around. She had no involvement in any project. After all, this is related to the future of the Lee Group. If it is really affected, as the future heir of Lee Baiken's inheritance, she will also suffer losses. Sunian is so smart. However, after the old man learned about this, he immediately spoke. Those who participate in this project will have their wages tripled during the project period. The old man is afraid that some people will think that Sunian is too silly and will be dissatisfied with Sunian. But after this news came out, it was not long before it was reported that Lee Baiken had increased his salary to 6 times. The entire Lee Group is really envious of those who participated in this project. You must know that the welfare of Lee's group was originally higher than that of other companies, and now it has doubled. I am really envious of people. Originally, some people were dissatisfied with Sunian's sudden intervention in the project to grab credit. But no one is dissatisfied now. With the money in place, anything can be said easily. Some people even hope that Sunian will be able to participate in more projects in the future and receive more benefits. When the old man heard the news, of course he understood that this brat was trying to slap him in the face, so he immediately called him, "You little bastard, what do you want to do? If you want to rebel, just slap him in the face." "Did you get beaten?" Lee Baiken said calmly. "What do you mean by paying 6 times, what do you mean?" Hearing the old man's anxious voice, Lee Baiken felt even happier. "It's nothing, I just think that if Sunian joins this project rashly, some people will be mentally unbalanced. In this case, just use more material compensation." "But I made up for it." "Really? Maybe the news didn't reach my ears in time, but it's okay. We are all for the company anyway," Lee Baiken said casually. "But Dad, this incident reminds me of one thing. You should not do this in the future. If you suddenly intervene in something, don't let it happen again. If it happens again, it will make people laugh." The next moment, the old man hung up the phone on the spot. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 250. Chapter 250. As long as I'm not embarrassed, others will be embarrassed. Sunian sat in the office in a daze. To be precise, I am recalling the design that the male and female protagonist won the bid in the previous life. Recall bit by bit. In the previous life, the heroine accidentally discovered the talented designer Fang Yulan, and then became good friends with Fang Yulan. Relying on Fang Yulan's design, she helped the hero win the bidding, and brought the entire Huo group to a higher level. After all, how important a city's future landmark building is to a real estate company. At the same time, Sunian was also wondering whether to come up with the design directly or go to Fang Yulan first. Now Sunian knows that every decision he makes will have a lot of impact, and he also understands that he must be cautious when making every decision. I have been struggling for a long time. Sunian lay down on the table, typing casually on the computer. What should I do, if I go to Fang Yulan? What should I do if something changes? After all, according to the trajectory of the previous life, the heroine must have been in contact with Fang Yulan. If I don't go to Fang Yulan, I will just take out the design and the two will. What should I do if I get hit? What should we do? Or what should I do if I replace the heroine and become good sisters with Fang Yulan? These sounds caused Li Baikan, who was dealing with work, to stop. After learning about Fang Yulan's importance last time, he had already called people's attention to Fang Yulan. After all, he planned to do it himself, but seeing Sunian being so entangled, he still felt that he should pause and let Sunian do it. Seeing that Sunian's little face was about to turn into a bun, he couldn't help but chuckle. Then Li Baikan stood up and walked to Sunian. But after seeing Sunian's computer screen, Li Baikan stopped smiling. Kissing must last for more than an hour. Kissing must last for more than an hour. The woman must be fed. Sunian. Sunian immediately closed the computer. Why is this guy so immoral? He actually peeked into my computer and violated my privacy. Sunian, do you have good lung capacity? The man whispered in her ear. Sunian was just confused about nothing, so he just typed blindly on the computer. I didn't use my brain much when I hit. Now that I hear this, I feel really embarrassed. Okay, at this time, as long as I am not embarrassed, the embarrassment can only be caused by others. What's the matter? Is there any problem? I think kissing is a normal thing when we are in love. I don't think this kiss is too excessive. Then I heard Li Baikan say in a very serious voice, if I remember correctly, the record for holding one's breath in this world is 24 minutes. If you can do it, you can apply for the Guinness World Records, maybe you can be famous forever. But as he spoke, the smile in Li Baikan's eyes slowly overflowed. Sunian. She had a standardized smile on her face. Why not be famous forever? This is usually used at funerals and is unlucky. Damn, this guy can't speak, so he can donate it? Isn't he interested in me? Is it fun to mock me like this? Can Li Baikan say that he just thinks Sunian is in a daze here and wants to liven up the atmosphere a little? Since the topic could not be continued, he naturally quickly changed the topic. Are you tired of staying here? If so, let's go out for a walk. End of this chapter.